Doc. You disintegrated Einstein.
Calm down, Marty. I didn't disintegrate anything. The molecular structure of both Einstein and the car are completely intact.
There are movies that entertain, and then there are movies that become part of the cultural DNA of entire generations. Back to the Future is firmly in that second category. Since it first roared onto cinema screens in the summer of 1985, this time-traveling adventure has never really left. It sits on the shelves of grandparents and teenagers alike, gets referenced in everything from political speeches to late-night comedy, and somehow still feels fresh every time someone watches it for the first or 50th time. The DeLorean, the flux capacitor, the clock tower, the lightning bolt, these aren't just movie moments anymore. They're mythology. But here's the thing about mythology, the version people know is rarely the whole story. Every legend has a backstage, a messy rough draft, a moment where everything nearly fell apart. And Back to the Future is no exception. Over the years, the cast and crew have opened up in interviews, documentaries, and reunion appearances to share some genuinely jaw-dropping details about what it actually took to bring this movie to life. Some of these revelations are funny. Some are surprisingly emotional. And a few of them will make you look at scenes you've watched 100 times in a completely different way. So buckle up, because we're going deeper into the story behind one of Hollywood's greatest films than most fans have ever gone. Let's start with the icon itself, the DeLorean DMC-12. Ask anyone to picture Back to the Future and within seconds, that silver, gull-winged machine appears in their mind. It's one of the most recognizable vehicles in cinema history, right up there with the Batmobile and James Bond's Aston Martin. But the cast and filmmakers have confirmed over the years that this beloved time machine almost looked nothing like what ended up on screen. In the earliest development stages of the script, writers Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale were toying with something far more stationary and far less glamorous. The working concept involved a time travel device built into a refrigerator, yes, a large household appliance. The logic made a certain kind of pulpy, 50s sci-fi sense. You'd climb inside, set the dial, and whoosh, you'd be gone. It had that laboratory experiment feeling that classic science fiction often leaned on. But Zemeckis and Gale realized pretty quickly that a refrigerator nailed to the floor of a set wasn't going to give their story any momentum, literally or figuratively. The whole appeal of a time travel adventure is movement, spontaneity, the sense that the next destination could come at any moment. A fridge in a garage couldn't deliver that. What they needed was a machine that could go anywhere, that had personality, and that would make a teenager's jaw drop. Enter the DeLorean. The DMC-12 had already become something of a pop culture oddity by the mid-80s, a car that had been hyped as the future of automotive design, only to see its manufacturer collapse into scandal and bankruptcy. It was discontinued before most people had ever sat inside one. But that strange, unfinished legacy actually made it perfect. It already looked like it came from another time. Its stainless steel body caught light in a way no ordinary car did. Those gull-wing doors opened upward like a spacecraft preparing for liftoff. When the filmmakers put that car on screen and surrounded it with fire, sparks, and the scream of an engine hitting 88 miles per hour, audiences didn't just accept it as a time machine, they believed it. The DeLorean didn't just carry the characters through time. It carried the entire film. Here's a fact that genuinely stuns people when they hear it for the first time. Back to the Future was rejected by nearly every major studio in Hollywood before it ever got made. The script that would go on to become one of the highest-grossing films of 1985, one of the most beloved comedies in the history of cinema, collected rejection after rejection like a scrapbook nobody wanted to keep. Zemeckis and Gale shopped the project around relentlessly. Studio after studio passed. Some felt the story was too strange, too hard to categorize. Was it a comedy? A science fiction film? A coming-of-age story? A family adventure? The honest answer was all of the above, but Hollywood in the early 80s wasn't always comfortable with things that didn't fit neatly into one box. Others worried about the budget required to pull off the effects convincingly, or felt that audiences wouldn't connect with such an unconventional premise. One studio reportedly passed because it felt the film was too wholesome. They were looking for something edgier, more adult. Another apparently thought the time travel elements were too confusing for mainstream audiences to follow. What saved the project, and this has been confirmed by those involved, was a combination of dogged persistence and the involvement of Steven Spielberg as a producer. Spielberg's name carried enormous weight in that era. He was coming off Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. and was essentially the most trusted name in popular entertainment. His willingness to attach himself to Back to the Future gave Universal Pictures enough confidence to finally greenlight the film. Even then, the enthusiasm wasn't exactly thunderous. But the door opened, and Zemeckis and Gale walked through it before anyone could change their mind. The film that nearly 4 dozen executives passed on would go on to earn over $380 million worldwide at the box office and launch a franchise that continues to this day. Most people know, at least vaguely, that Michael J. Fox wasn't the first actor to play Marty McFly. But what fans often don't fully appreciate is just how far into production the film was before that change was made, and how significantly it altered everything that came after. Eric Stoltz was cast in the lead role and filmed for approximately 5 weeks before Zemeckis and Gale made the painful decision to let him go. Stoltz was, by all accounts, a dedicated and serious performer. He brought real commitment to the role and worked hard every day on set. But the film was a comedy at its core, and Stoltz's approach was rooted in dramatic realism. He played Marty with an intensity and emotional weight that simply didn't match the breezy, fast-talking, charismatic teenager the script required. The scenes weren't landing the way the filmmakers had imagined, and after weeks of hoping the tone would shift, they realized it wasn't going to. Meanwhile, Michael J. Fox had been their original choice from the very beginning, but he'd been unavailable because of his commitment to the television series Family Ties, where he played Alex P. Keaton. The show's producers initially refused to release him. When a shift in the Family Ties production schedule created a narrow window of availability, Zemeckis and Gale moved immediately. Fox agreed to take on the role under what can only be described as grueling conditions, filming Family Ties during the day and shooting Back to the Future at night, sometimes sleeping only a handful of hours before starting the whole cycle again. He's spoken about that period as one of the most exhausting of his professional life, fueled largely by the knowledge that this was a once-in-a-generation opportunity. The results, of course, speak for themselves. Fox's Marty McFly is one of the great comic adventure performances in American film history, effortlessly charming, physically dynamic, and emotionally grounded in a way that makes every absurd situation feel completely real. One of the more quietly fascinating behind-the-scenes stories to emerge from the film's cast involves Leah Thompson, who played Lorraine Baines, the teenage version of Marty's mother, memorably smitten with her own future son in one of the film's most brilliantly awkward running gags. Thompson has spoken openly in interviews about the fact that when Michael J. Fox first arrived on set, she wasn't exactly rolling out the welcome mat. The reason was loyalty, plain and simple. Thompson had already spent weeks filming alongside Eric Stoltz, and the two had developed a genuine friendship. When Stoltz was replaced, it stung. She understood the professional reasoning, but understanding something and accepting it emotionally are two different things. And on top of the personal loss, Thompson carried a bias she's since been candid about. She considered herself a film actress, and in her mind at the time, Fox was a television star. In the entertainment industry of the early 80s, that distinction carried real weight. Film and television were considered separate and unequal worlds, and Thompson's pride led her to initially keep Fox at a professional distance. What changed that perception wasn't any single dramatic moment, it was simply watching Fox work. His comedic instincts were extraordinary. His timing was precise without ever feeling mechanical. And where Stoltz had brought gravity to the character, Fox brought something the script was quietly begging for: genuine lightness. The scenes the two of them shared, particularly the one set in the 1955 high school, where Lorraine's misplaced crush creates mounting discomfort for Marty, only worked because Fox made the absurdity feel human. Thompson recognized it, and her opinion shifted completely. She's since spoken about the experience with the kind of self-awareness that's genuinely rare in Hollywood, acknowledging that her own preconceptions had almost gotten in the way of one of the best working relationships of her career. Christopher Lloyd is Doc Brown. It's one of those casting decisions so perfect, so completely realized, that it's almost impossible to separate the actor from the role. And yet, according to stories that have circulated among the cast and crew for years, Lloyd came remarkably close to never reading the script at all. At the time the project came to him, Lloyd was an established and respected actor with serious credits to his name. His work on the sitcom Taxi had made him a recognizable face, and his appearance in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest had demonstrated his range as a dramatic performer. He wasn't a struggling actor looking for his next opportunity. When the Back to the Future script arrived, he gave it a quick look and wasn't immediately grabbed. The character of Doc Brown, eccentric, loud, emotionally volatile, prone to enormous physical and verbal reactions, might have seemed over the top on a first pass. Lloyd reportedly set the script aside, uncertain it was the right fit. What brought him back to it, according to accounts from those involved, was a combination of a closer read and, crucially, the chance to sit down with Robert Zemeckis. The director's enthusiasm for the material was infectious. He communicated a vision that went beyond the comedic surface. This was a story about friendship, about mentorship, about two people from completely different worlds finding in each other something they couldn't find anywhere else. Lloyd connected with that vision deeply. He signed on and delivered a performance that remains, for decades later, one of the most beloved in the history of popular cinema. Wild-eyed, warm-hearted, and absolutely committed from the first frame to the last, his Doc Brown is the emotional engine of the entire trilogy. Among the casting stories surrounding Back to the Future, one of the most poignant involves an actress most casual fans have never thought much about, Melora Hardin, who was originally cast as Jennifer Parker, Marty's girlfriend. Hardin had been cast opposite Eric Stoltz and had already begun filming when the decision was made to replace Stoltz with Fox. And then, through no fault of her own performance, Hardin found herself replaced as well. The reason was blunt: height. Standing next to Michael J. Fox, who is notably shorter than average, Hardin appeared too tall. The filmmakers were concerned about how the visual dynamic between Marty and his girlfriend would read on screen, particularly in romantic scenes. It was, by any reasonable measure, an unfair reason to lose a role, but it was the reason nonetheless. Claudia Wells, who was closer in height to Fox and had also auditioned for the part, was brought in to take over.
Hardin has spoken about the experience in interviews over the years with a grace and perspective that's hard not to admire. Losing a major film role after you've already started shooting is genuinely painful, especially early in a career when every opportunity feels precious. But she didn't let it define her. What Hardin built after Back to the Future passed her by is actually a remarkable testament to sustained talent. She went on to find significant success in television, most notably as Jan Levinson in the American version of The Office, a role that brought her an entirely new generation of fans and demonstrated a comedic and dramatic range that any casting director in Hollywood should envy. She also appeared in the mystery series, Monk, in a recurring role that earned her genuine affection from viewers. The actress, who was deemed not quite right for a major 80s blockbuster, turned out to be one of the more quietly durable careers that era produced. In 2025, something genuinely special happened for fans of the franchise. To mark the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future, several members of the original cast came together at Fan Expo New Orleans for a reunion that reminded everyone exactly why this film has never really gone away. Michael J. Fox, Leah Thompson, Christopher Lloyd, Thomas F. Wilson, and Huey Lewis all attended, and by every account, the warmth between them was completely real. Fox, characteristically sharp and generous with the audience, shared behind-the-scenes memories and reflected on what the film has meant across the arc of his life. Thompson spoke about the surreal experience of watching something she made as a young actress continue resonating with people who weren't even born when it was filmed. Lloyd was, by all reports, electric, as enthusiastic about Doc Brown in his 80s as he was when he first played the character in his 40s. Thomas F. Wilson, who played the magnificent villain Biff Tannen, brought humor and warmth to his recollections of playing the role audiences loved to hate. And Huey Lewis, whose song, The Power of Love, became as synonymous with the film as the DeLorean itself, reflected on the strange and wonderful journey of watching a piece of music become permanently woven into pop culture history. What the reunion made clear, more than anything, was that Back to the Future isn't just a film people remember fondly, it's a film that actively shaped the people who made it, the people who watched it, and the culture that absorbed it. The secrets the cast has revealed over the years don't diminish the magic. If anything, knowing how close so many things came to going differently makes the finished film feel even more like a miracle. The refrigerator became a DeLorean. The rejection became a phenomenon. The exhausted TV actor became an icon. And 40 years later, the clock is still ticking.